She wore white to my wedding and stood in the front row, smiling. When the vows started, she coughed loudly and winked at my husband. I raised my glass. Waiters passed out envelopes. The one she got made her face drain. She fled before dessert. The hotel receipt slipped from my fingers like a death sentence, floating to the hardwood floor of our bedroom. Room 312 at the downtown Marriott. John's name printed in bold black letters. Tuesday, March 15, 2:47 a.m. The timestamp burned into my retinas as I stood frozen, holding his navy blazer that still smelled faintly of his cologne mixed with something else. Something floral and expensive that definitely wasn't mine. I had been preparing his clothes for dry cleaning, the same domestic routine I'd performed hundreds of times before. But this Tuesday morning was different. This Tuesday morning, my entire world collapsed with the crinkle of thermal paper between my trembling fingers. "Working late again, honey," he had said that night, kissing my forehead with lips that now felt like they belonged to a stranger. "Big presentation tomorrow. Don't wait up." The lies came so easily to him. So smoothly. So perfectly rehearsed. Before we continue, I want to thank you for joining me in sharing these stories of courage and justice. If you believe that truth should triumph over deception, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need to hear this. Now let's see how this unfolds. I sank onto our bed, the same bed where we'd planned our wedding just weeks ago, spreading fabric samples across the white comforter, laughing about seating arrangements and menu choices. The same bed where he'd whispered promises about our future, about growing old together, about the children we'd have someday. My hands shook as I picked up the receipt again, studying every detail as if it might transform into something innocent. But there was no mistaking it. The charge was for 1 night, 1 room, and it was definitely his credit card. The same card we'd used to book our honeymoon flights to Italy. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I'd been at home, probably practicing my wedding vows or obsessing over centerpiece arrangements, John had been at a hotel with another woman. The betrayal felt physical, like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it nearly stopped beating. I needed more. I needed to know everything. Our home office became my command center over the next 3 days. I pulled our shared phone records, scrolling through months of calls and text messages with the dedication of a forensic accountant. There it was, a number that appeared regularly, always during his supposed late work nights or weekend business trips. The calls lasted anywhere from 20 minutes to over an hour, intimate conversations that should have been happening with his future wife. The cloud account revealed even more devastating evidence. John thought he'd been clever deleting messages from his phone, but our family sharing plan kept everything synchronized. I watched months of my marriage dissolve in real time as I read through deleted conversations filled with pet names, promises, and explicit details that made my stomach turn. "Can't wait to see you tonight, gorgeous. Emily has no idea. She's too busy with wedding planning to notice. You're all I think about during these boring dinners with her." Each message felt like a physical blow. The casual cruelty of his words, the way he dismissed our relationship as something boring and insignificant, cut deeper than any dramatic confession could have. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a single mistake. This was months of calculated deception, a complete double life that made me question every memory we'd ever shared. Thursday evening arrived with its usual domestic rhythm. John showered while I prepared dinner, the sound of running water providing cover for my investigation. I'd been examining his work shirts more carefully now, looking for evidence I'd previously missed in my trusting naivete. The coral lipstick stain on his white collar was faint but unmistakable. My hands trembled as I held the shirt up to the light, photographing the evidence with my phone. The flash illuminated my wedding ring, a painful reminder of promises that had already been broken before they were even made. The lipstick was expensive. I recognized the undertone from department store displays. Coral Passion, probably MAC or Charlotte Tilbury. Definitely not a drugstore brand. This woman had taste, money, and apparently no shame about marking her territory on my husband's clothing. I spent that night researching the phone number, using every reverse lookup service and social media platform I could find. The digital breadcrumbs led me down a rabbit hole that ended with a face that would haunt me for months. Evelyn Morrison. 28 years old, marketing executive at a downtown firm. Stunning in that effortless way that made ordinary women feel invisible. Her Instagram feed was a carefully curated collection of success and sophistication. Wine tastings, charity galas, exotic vacations. And there, nestled between posts about her promotion and her weekend in Napa, was a photo of her engagement ring. My blood turned to ice as I read the comments. Congratulations poured in from friends and colleagues, celebrating her upcoming marriage to someone named Marcus. She was engaged. She was planning her own wedding while destroying mine. But the most chilling discovery came when I scrolled deeper into her posts. Photos of her at business dinners, always perfectly dressed, always holding a glass of wine. And in 3 separate photos, I spotted the same coral lipstick that had stained John's collar. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Evelyn wasn't just having an affair with my husband. She was living a complete double life, lying to her own fiancé while systematically destroying my marriage. The calculating nature of her deception revealed a level of manipulation that made me physically ill. Saturday morning brought the final insult. I was checking our wedding venue's social media page when I saw it. Our wedding invitation photographed and posted to Evelyn's Instagram story. The elegant script that had taken me weeks to choose was now a prop in her sick game. She'd added a laughing emoji as if my approaching marriage was some kind of private joke. The comments from her friends were equally devastating. Can't wait to see you there. You're going to look amazing. Love a good wedding party. She was planning to attend my wedding. She was going to sit in those chairs I'd agonized over choosing, eat the food I'd spent months selecting, and watch me marry the man she'd been sharing for months. The audacity was breathtaking. I screenshot everything, my fingers moving with mechanical precision as I documented each piece of evidence. The hotel receipt, the phone records, the lipstick stain, the social media posts. All of it carefully saved and organized like a prosecutor building a case. Because that's exactly what I was doing. As I sat in our kitchen that evening watching John eat the dinner I'd prepared while he checked his phone, probably texting her, something fundamental shifted inside me. The naive woman who'd trusted blindly was gone, replaced by someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. If Evelyn Morrison wanted to play games at my wedding, I would make sure she got exactly what she deserved. But it wouldn't be the victory she was expecting. It would be complete and utter destruction witnessed by everyone who mattered. The perfect life I'd built was crumbling, but from its ashes, I would create something far more satisfying. Justice served cold, public, and absolutely devastating. My wedding day was still 2 weeks away. That gave me just enough time to orchestrate the perfect revenge. The business card felt heavy in my palm as I dialed the number. Davidson Investigations, 24 years of experience in matrimonial cases. The receptionist's voice was professional, almost clinical as she scheduled my appointment for the following morning. I'd chosen them specifically because their online reviews mentioned discretion and thoroughness, 2 qualities I desperately needed. Walking into their downtown office felt like crossing a threshold I could never uncross. The waiting room smelled of leather and coffee, decorated with certificates and commendations that spoke to their success in uncovering uncomfortable truths. When Margaret Davidson called my name, her firm handshake and direct gaze told me I'd made the right choice. I need everything, I told her, sliding a manila folder across her mahogany desk. Every meeting, every lie, every secret. Money is no object. Margaret's gray eyes studied the evidence I'd already gathered. The hotel receipt, the phone records, the social media screenshots. She nodded slowly, recognizing the thoroughness of my amateur investigation. You've done excellent preliminary work, Mrs. Carter. Give me 1 week. That week felt like a lifetime. I maintained my routine, attended final wedding dress fittings, confirmed catering details, all while my private investigator dismantled every lie John and Evelyn had constructed. Margaret called me Thursday afternoon with results that exceeded my worst fears. You need to see this in person, she said, her voice carrying an unusual tension. The photographs spread across her conference table told a story more devastating than I'd imagined. John and Evelyn entering the Marriott together, captured from multiple angles. Timestamps showing they'd been meeting there twice weekly for 4 months. But the most shocking discovery wasn't about their affair. It was about the elaborate deception Evelyn was orchestrating beyond our marriage. She's been purchasing pregnancy tests online, Margaret explained, pointing to printed receipts from her investigation. Specifically, tests that can be manipulated to show false positive results. She's also been using photo editing software to create fake ultrasound images and medical documents. My hands trembled as I examined the evidence. Invoices for fake pregnancy tests, browser history showing tutorials for medical document forgery, and most damning of all, drafts of text messages to two different men, each claiming to carry their child. She's telling her fiancé Marcus that she's pregnant with his baby, Margaret continued, while simultaneously telling your husband that their affair resulted in pregnancy. She's using this lie to manipulate both men, pressuring Marcus into marriage while convincing John to leave you. The calculated cruelty took my breath away. Evelyn wasn't just destroying my marriage. She was systematically manipulating multiple lives with fabricated pregnancies. The scope of her deception revealed a sociopathic level of planning that made my stomach turn. There's more, Margaret said, pulling out another folder. I traced her credit card purchases. She's been buying expensive maternity clothes and pregnancy books, posting photos on social media to maintain the illusion. She's even scheduled fake doctor's appointments, using her lunch breaks to maintain the charade. I studied the timeline Margaret had constructed. Every lie, every manipulation, every calculated move designed to control the men in her life while maintaining her image as a successful, devoted woman. The pregnancy lie was her masterpiece, a single deception that could secure her future with Marcus while using John as her backup plan. The decision to contact Marcus wasn't easy, but justice demanded it. Through encrypted messaging apps and anonymous email accounts, I reached out to Evelyn's unsuspecting fiancé. His initial skepticism quickly dissolved when I provided irrefutable evidence of his fiancée's deception. His first message back was heartbreaking. We've been planning the nursery. I've been reading parenting books. How could she do this? Marcus revealed details that painted an even darker picture of Evelyn's manipulation. She'd been pressuring him to buy a larger house, increase his life insurance and merge their finances, all supposedly for their growing family. He'd been working overtime to afford the future she'd fabricated, sacrificing his health and happiness for a child that never existed. She scheduled our wedding for next month, he wrote. Said she wanted to be married before the baby came. I've been stressed about affording everything, working 70-hour weeks to give her the life she deserves. Our anonymous correspondence evolved into a collaboration between two victims seeking justice. Marcus had access to Evelyn's apartment, her personal belongings, and most importantly, evidence of her deception that I could never obtain. Together we began building an airtight case against the woman who had destroyed both our futures. Tuesday afternoon I drove to the downtown Marriott, my heart pounding as I approached the scene of their betrayal. The lobby was elegant and impersonal, filled with business travelers and tourists who had no idea they were walking through the ruins of my marriage. The desk clerk, a kind woman named Patricia, remembered the regular Tuesday night guests immediately. Room 312, she said with a knowing look. They've been coming here for months. Always paid in cash after the first visit, probably trying to hide it from their spouses. Patricia's sympathy was genuine as she provided additional receipts and security footage timestamps. She'd witnessed their routine, seen them laughing and touching in ways that left no doubt about their relationship. Her detailed accounts filled gaps in my timeline, confirming that their affair had been going on far longer than I'd initially suspected. She always seemed so confident, Patricia said, shaking her head. Acted like she owned the place. Made jokes about how easy it was to fool people. I always felt sorry for whoever was being hurt by their lies. The hotel's business center became my temporary headquarters as I compiled evidence and cross-referenced timelines. Every receipt, every timestamp, every witness account painted a clearer picture of systematic betrayal that went far beyond simple infidelity. With my wedding just days away, I began orchestrating Evelyn's exposure with military precision. The evidence was professionally printed on heavy cardstock, each photograph and document selected for maximum impact. I chose elegant cream-colored envelopes that matched my wedding's color scheme. If Evelyn wanted to make my wedding about her, I would give her exactly that. The local print shop owner, Mr. Chin, worked overtime to perfect every detail. Gold foil seals, premium paper, professional binding that made each envelope look like an expensive wedding favor. He asked no questions, understanding from my demeanor that this was serious business requiring absolute discretion. I spent hours arranging the contents of each envelope for psychological impact. The hotel receipt would establish the affair, the photographs would confirm the physical relationship, but the fake pregnancy test bearing my name would deliver the final devastating blow. A mirror of her own deception that would expose her manipulation tactics to everyone present. Marcus confirmed his role in our plan through encrypted messages. He would arrive at the reception with Evelyn's real negative pregnancy test, the one she'd hidden that morning before applying makeup over its results for her social media posts. His timing had to be perfect, arriving just as the initial shock was settling, delivering the final proof that would make her denials impossible. The irony was beautiful in its cruelty. Evelyn had chosen my wedding as her stage for triumph, planning to humiliate me in front of everyone who mattered. Instead, she would become the star of her own destruction, exposed as a manipulative liar in the most public way possible. As I sealed the final envelope, my hands steady despite the magnitude of what I was planning, I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. The woman who thought she could destroy multiple lives for her selfish gain was about to discover that some games have consequences she never imagined. The morning light filtered through the hotel suite's gauze curtains as I sat at the mahogany vanity, watching my reflection apply lipstick with mechanical precision. Rose petals, the same shade I'd chosen months ago for its romantic symbolism. How naive that woman seemed now, the one who believed in fairy tale endings and happily ever after. My bridesmaids fluttered around the suite like pastel butterflies, their voices a constant stream of excitement about flower arrangements and weather forecasts. Sarah adjusted my veil for the third time while Jessica debated which earrings complemented my dress better. Their joy felt distant, like watching happiness through bulletproof glass. "Emily, you're glowing," my sister Claire said, squeezing my shoulders. "This is going to be the most beautiful wedding." If only she knew how beautiful the justice would be. Hidden beneath layers of silk and tulle in my wardrobe bag were the instruments of Evelyn's destruction. 50 cream-colored envelopes, each one sealed with gold foil and containing evidence that would shatter her carefully constructed world. I'd spent the previous evening arranging them by table number, ensuring every guest would receive their revelation simultaneously. The fake pregnancy test had been particularly satisfying to create. Using Evelyn's own tactics against her, I'd manipulated a standard test to show positive results, then carefully written my name where the date should appear. The symbolism was perfect. She would recognize her own methods being turned against her while everyone else witnessed her preferred weapon of manipulation. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Found it. Hidden behind her jewelry box just like you suspected. My hands are shaking but I'm ready." I typed back quickly, "Stay strong." She chose this path when she decided to destroy innocent people. His response came immediately. "I can't believe I was planning to spend my life with someone capable of this level of deception. Thank you for showing me who she really is." The tragedy of Marcus's situation wasn't lost on me. He'd been working double shifts, sacrificing his health and happiness to prepare for a future built entirely on lies. Evelyn had stolen months of his life, manipulated his love into a weapon against his own well-being. Today he would finally see her true face. At 10:30 I excused myself from the bridesmaid chaos, claiming I needed a private moment to gather my thoughts. The truth was far more calculated. I had a confrontation to conduct. John arrived at the bridal suite 15 minutes later, looking handsome in his charcoal tuxedo but carrying tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there during our engagement photos. He'd probably spent the morning wondering if I suspected anything, never imagining the depth of my knowledge. "You look beautiful, Em," he said, his voice carrying forced enthusiasm. I turned from the window where I'd been watching early guests arrive, my wedding dress rustling with the movement. "Do I, John? Beautiful enough to keep your attention? Or am I still too boring for your taste?" His face went pale. "What are you talking about?" Without breaking eye contact, I reached into my purse and placed the hotel receipt on the vanity between us. Then the photographs of his lipstick-stained collar. Finally, printouts of his deleted text messages, the words that had called our relationship boring and dismissed me as naive. John's knees buckled and he sank into the velvet armchair near the window. "Emily, I can explain." "Can you?" I interrupted, my voice steady despite the fury burning in my chest. "Can you explain 4 months of lies? Can you explain telling Evelyn that I'm too busy with wedding planning to notice your betrayal?" Can you explain how you've been living a double life while I planned our future? Tears streamed down his face, but I felt nothing. The man crying in front of me was a stranger wearing my fiancé's face. It meant nothing, he whispered. It was just physical. I love you, Emily. I want to marry you. No, John. You want to marry the idea of me. The stable, predictable woman who won't question your lies or challenge your deceptions. But that woman died the moment I found your hotel receipt. He looked up with desperate eyes. What do you want me to do? I'll end things with her. I'll do anything to fix this. Oh, you're going to end things with her, I said, smoothing my dress with deliberate calm. But not the way you think. You have one choice. Walk down that aisle, say your vows, and play the role of devoted groom until I give you permission to speak. Or I can call off this wedding right now and explain to 300 guests exactly why their afternoon has been wasted. Emily, please. Those are your options, John. Play along with my plan or face immediate humiliation. Choose wisely. The terror in his eyes told me he understood the gravity of his situation. He nodded slowly, his face a mask of resignation and fear. After he left, I returned to the window, watching guests stream into our venue. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was about to give them the most memorable wedding they'd ever attend, just not for the reasons they expected. At 11:45, a white Mercedes pulled into the circular driveway. Evelyn emerged like a vision designed to steal attention, her dress a bold statement of disrespect that made several early arrivals whisper among themselves. She'd chosen cream silk with a plunging neckline and a hem that barely reached her knees. Inappropriate for a wedding guest but perfect for a woman trying to upstage the bride. From my third-floor window, I watched her survey the venue with predatory satisfaction. She adjusted her dress, checked her reflection in the car window, and applied fresh lipstick, Coral Passion, the same shade that had stained John's collar. Her confidence was breathtaking, the self-assurance of someone who believed her lies were undetectable. She positioned herself in the front row, exactly where I'd expected. Close enough to catch John's eye during the ceremony, positioned for maximum disruption when she began her planned performance. Her smile was sharp and knowing as she greeted other guests, playing the role of innocent wedding attendee while plotting destruction. My maid of honor knocked softly before entering. Emily, it's time for final preparations. The photographer wants a few more shots before we head downstairs. I nodded, taking one last look at Evelyn's confident posture. She had no idea that her final performance was about to become her complete annihilation. The head waiter, David, appeared at my door exactly as planned. We'd rehearsed this moment yesterday, going over every detail until the timing was flawless. Mrs. Carter, the envelopes are distributed according to your seating chart. Every table has their assignments. When you give the signal during your toast, we'll begin immediately. Perfect, David. Remember, simultaneously. Every guest receives their envelope at exactly the same moment. Understood, ma'am. The staff is ready. I handed him an extra envelope marked with Evelyn's table number. Make sure she gets this one personally. I want to see her face when she opens it. As David left with the final envelope, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The woman who thought she could destroy my marriage while living her own lie was about to discover that some games have consequences she never imagined. The justice I'd planned would be swift, public, and absolutely devastating. The chapel doors opened with ceremonial grandeur, revealing 300 faces turned toward me in anticipation. The string quartet began Pachelbel's canon, the same piece I'd dreamed of walking down the aisle to since childhood. But this wasn't the fairy tale moment I'd once imagined. This was the opening act of the most elaborate revenge ever orchestrated at a wedding. My father's arm felt steady beneath mine as we began our procession, his proud smile genuine despite his ignorance of what was truly happening. The ivory silk of my dress whispered against marble floors as we moved past rows of family and friends, their faces beaming with the kind of joy reserved for weddings and christenings. But my eyes were fixed on one face in particular. Evelyn sat in the third row, exactly where she'd positioned herself for maximum visibility. Her cream dress was a deliberate violation of wedding etiquette, designed to draw attention and establish dominance. As our eyes met, she lifted her champagne flute, champagne she'd helped herself to before the ceremony even began, and offered a mock toast with the kind of smile that belonged on a predator. The audacity was breathtaking. She wasn't content to simply attend my wedding. She was performing her own show, ensuring everyone noticed her beauty, her confidence, her complete lack of respect for the occasion. Other guests had already begun whispering about her inappropriate attire and behavior, but she seemed to feed on their attention. I returned her smile with one of my own, serene, knowing, and infinitely more dangerous than she could comprehend. Father handed me to John at the altar, his kiss on my cheek accompanied by a whispered, "I love you, sweetheart." The irony of his blessing on a marriage already destroyed by betrayal wasn't lost on me, but I squeezed his hand with genuine affection. He deserved better than to discover his daughter's heartbreak at her own wedding. John's hands trembled as he took mine, his earlier confrontation with reality evident in the tightness around his eyes. He looked handsome in his charcoal tuxedo, playing the role of devoted groom with Oscar-worthy performance skills. But I could see the fear beneath his composed expression, the understanding that he was no longer in control of his own narrative. The officiant, Reverend Matthews, began with traditional words about love, commitment, and the sacred bond of marriage. His voice carried the authority of 30 years conducting ceremonies, completely unaware that he was presiding over the most unconventional wedding of his career. As we reached the exchange of vows, Evelyn began her planned disruption. A theatrical cough echoed through the chapel, loud enough to interrupt the Reverend mid-sentence. Every head turned toward the sound, finding Evelyn covering her mouth with false modesty while her eyes sparkled with malicious amusement. She repeated the performance twice more, each cough perfectly timed to maximum disruption. "Excuse me," she said in a stage whisper that carried throughout the sacred space. Something caught in my throat. But her piece de resistance came during John's vows. As he spoke about faithfulness and eternal love, words that now tasted like ash in the air, Evelyn made deliberate eye contact with him and winked. Fully. Provocatively. With the kind of intimate familiarity that left no doubt about their relationship. The guests' murmurs rippled through the chapel like disturbed water. This wasn't accidental rudeness. This was calculated sabotage designed to humiliate me on what should have been the happiest day of my life. Elderly relatives frowned with disapproval while younger guests exchanged shocked glances, all wondering who this woman was and why she felt entitled to disrupt our ceremony. But instead of the devastation Evelyn expected to see on my face, I maintained perfect composure. My smile never wavered, my voice remained steady, and my vows flowed with practiced grace. Because I knew something she didn't. Her moment of perceived triumph was actually the final nail in her own coffin. The reception transition happened with military precision. Guests moved from chapel to ballroom, their conversations buzzing with speculation about the inappropriate woman who'd disrupted our ceremony. Evelyn glided among them like a socialite at a gallery opening, clearly energized by the attention her behavior had generated. She positioned herself at a prominent table near the dance floor, her body language radiating confidence and satisfaction. She'd achieved exactly what she'd come for. She'd stolen focus from the bride, demonstrated her power over the groom, and established herself as the most memorable person at the event. What she didn't notice was Marcus entering through the service entrance, his face grim with determination as he took his assigned position near the kitchen doors. What she couldn't see were the wait staff making final preparations, checking their watches and waiting for the signal that would transform her victory into catastrophic defeat. The ballroom buzzed with typical wedding reception energy. My college friends admired the centerpieces while John's business associates made small talk about golf handicaps and stock portfolios. The elderly relatives found their assigned tables and began the traditional commentary about how lovely everything looked and how proud they were of the happy couple. Evelyn held court at table 7, spinning some elaborate story that had her companions laughing and hanging on every word. She'd introduced herself as a business associate of John's, neglecting to mention the nature of their after-hours collaboration. Her performance was flawless, charming, vivacious, the kind of woman who made others feel slightly inadequate by comparison. When the time came for toasts, the traditional clinking of silverware against crystal glasses brought the room to attention. My maid of honor offered sweet words about friendship and future happiness. John's best man shared embarrassing college stories that had everyone laughing and applauding. Then it was my turn. I rose with the fluid grace of someone completely in control, my champagne flute catching the light from the crystal chandeliers above. The room fell silent with that particular hush reserved for brides' speeches, 300 faces turned toward me in expectation of heartfelt sentiment and grateful tears. Instead, they were about to witness the most devastating exposure in wedding history. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate this special day," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's acoustic-friendly space. "Your presence means everything to John and me as we begin this new chapter of our lives." Evelyn raised her own glass with exaggerated enthusiasm, her smile wide and predatory as she prepared to savor my emotional moment. She had no idea that in 30 seconds her entire world would collapse in the most public way imaginable. "Marriage is about trust," I continued, letting my gaze sweep across the room before landing briefly on Evelyn's confident face. "It's about honesty, commitment, and the courage to face truth together, no matter how difficult that truth might be." With practiced elegance, I raised my champagne flute higher, the signal I'd arranged with David and his team. Across the ballroom, waiters appeared as if materialized from thin air, each carrying silver trays loaded with cream-colored envelopes. Evelyn's smile faltered slightly as she watched the coordinated distribution begin. Confusion flickered across her features as every table received their elegant packages simultaneously, the golden seals catching the light like tiny warnings of approaching doom. The envelope slipped from Evelyn's manicured fingers like a death sentence, its golden seal broken and its contents scattered across the pristine white tablecloth. Time seemed suspended as she stared at the evidence sprawled before her. The hotel receipt with its damning timestamp, the photograph of coral lipstick staining John's collar, and most devastatingly, the pregnancy test bearing my name where the date should be. Her champagne flute slipped from nerveless fingers, crystal shattering against the marble floor in a sound that seemed to echo her crumbling composure. The confident smile that had graced her face moments earlier dissolved into something approaching terror as her brain processed the magnitude of her exposure. "No," she whispered, the word barely audible above the sudden hush that had fallen over table 7. Her hands shook as she gathered the photographs, as if hiding them could somehow undo their revelation. This can't be." But the evidence was undeniable, professionally printed and impossible to dismiss as forgery. Every detail was crisp, clear, and absolutely damning. Around the ballroom, a symphony of shock began to build. Mrs. Henderson from the country club let out an audible gasp as she opened her envelope, her pearl necklace catching the light as her hand flew to her throat. The sound rippled outward like a stone dropped in still water, followed by the rustle of paper and sharp intakes of breath as 300 guests discovered the same devastating truth simultaneously. "Oh my goodness," someone whispered near the cake table. "Is this real?" came another voice from across the room. The elegant wedding reception transformed before my eyes into something resembling a courtroom where the verdict had just been read. Conversations died mid-sentence as people studied the evidence, their faces shifting from confusion to understanding to judgment. The social elite of our community, people who prided themselves on discretion and propriety, found themselves witnesses to the most scandalous exposure they'd ever encountered. John's business partner, Robert, held up the hotel receipt with the kind of clinical detachment reserved for examining financial documents. His wife, Margaret, studied the lipstick photograph with the intensity of a detective, her expression growing more disgusted by the second. "That's definitely not Emily's shade," Margaret said to no one in particular, her voice carrying clearly in the stunned silence. At the young professionals table, my former colleague Sarah was explaining the significance of the fake pregnancy test to her confused husband. "She made it look like Emily was claiming to be pregnant with John's baby," Sarah said, her voice filled with dawning understanding. "It's exactly what manipulative people do, they accuse others of their own tactics." The revelation created a domino effect of understanding throughout the room. Guests who had initially been confused by Evelyn's disruption during the ceremony now saw it in a new light. Her inappropriate behavior wasn't random rudeness. It was the calculated cruelty of someone who believed she held all the cards. Evelyn's table companions had backed away from her as if betrayal were contagious. The charming business associate they'd been laughing with minutes earlier had transformed into someone they no longer recognized. Their faces showed the particular kind of revulsion reserved for people who discovered they'd been lied to by someone they'd trusted. But the real fireworks were yet to come. The reception hall's double doors burst open with the force of a man who had nothing left to lose. Marcus strode into the ballroom like an avenging angel, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled and his eyes blazing with the kind of fury that comes from having your entire future revealed as an elaborate lie. In his trembling hands he held a small white plastic stick, the original negative pregnancy test that Evelyn had hidden in her jewelry box that very morning. "Looking for this, darling?" Marcus's voice cut through the ballroom like a blade, his usual gentle tone replaced by something sharp and dangerous. Every head turned toward his dramatic entrance, 300 guests becoming an audience for the most devastating confrontation in wedding history. Marcus's face was a mask of betrayal and rage, the kind of expression that comes from discovering the person you love most has been systematically destroying your life. Evelyn's remaining color drained completely, leaving her looking like a ghost in her inappropriate white dress. She rose unsteadily from her chair, her confidence completely shattered as she faced the man whose life she'd been manipulating for months. "Marcus, I can explain," she started, but her voice cracked on his name. "Explain what?" Marcus demanded, holding the pregnancy test above his head like evidence in a trial. "Explain how you've been lying about carrying my child. Explain how you made me work myself to exhaustion to afford a future that was built on complete fiction. Explain how you manipulated me into proposing because you claimed we had created a life together." The room watched in stunned fascination as Evelyn's web of lies unraveled in real time. This wasn't just about her affair with John. This was about a systematic pattern of manipulation that had destroyed multiple lives. "I was going to tell you," Evelyn said weakly, but even she seemed to realize how pathetic the words sounded. "When?" Marcus's laugh was bitter and sharp. "After our wedding? After I'd signed over half my assets to you? After you'd secured your financial future by lying about the most sacred thing two people can create together?" Evelyn tried to move toward him, her hands outstretched in a gesture of pleading, but Marcus stepped back as if her touch would contaminate him. The movement brought her face to face with John, who had been standing frozen near the head table, his own world collapsing as the depth of Evelyn's deception became clear. "You told me she didn't mean anything to you," Evelyn said to John, her voice rising with desperation. "You said you were going to leave her after the wedding. You promised me." "I promised you nothing," John said, his voice hollow with shock. "I never said I'd leave Emily. I never promised you anything except secrets and lies." The triangle of betrayal was complete. Marcus destroyed by fabricated pregnancy, John exposed as an unfaithful coward, and Evelyn revealed as a master manipulator whose schemes had finally collapsed under their own weight. The ballroom erupted in a chaos of whispered conversations and shocked exclamations. Some guests rose from their tables to get a better view of the unfolding drama, while others seemed frozen in their seats, unable to process the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Evelyn stood alone in the center of it all, her white dress no longer a symbol of her intended triumph but a stark reminder of her complete defeat. The woman who had orchestrated elaborate lies to control multiple men now faced the consequences of her actions in the most public forum imaginable. Her carefully constructed world of manipulation had crumbled completely, leaving her exposed and defenseless before an audience of 300 witnesses who would ensure her reputation never recovered. The silence that followed the explosive confrontation was deafening. Evelyn stood frozen in the center of the ballroom, her designer dress now resembling a costume from a play where she'd forgotten her lines. The confidence that had carried her through months of deception had evaporated completely, leaving behind a woman who looked smaller, younger, and utterly defeated. Her eyes darted frantically around the room, searching for a friendly face, an ally, anyone who might offer support or understanding. Instead, she found 300 pairs of eyes staring back with expressions ranging from disgust to pity to cold judgment. The social elite she tried so hard to impress now saw her exactly as she was, a manipulative fraud who had built her life on elaborate lies. "I need to leave," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Evelyn's first step toward the exit was unsteady, her usual graceful movements replaced by the awkward stumble of someone whose world had just collapsed. The whispers began immediately, a low buzz of conversation that followed her retreat like a swarm of bees. "Can you believe she faked a pregnancy? That poor man worked himself to death for a child that never existed. Did you see how she disrupted the ceremony? What kind of person does that?" Each comment was a nail in the coffin of her reputation. By the time she reached the ballroom doors, her carefully constructed social standing was already in ruins. The country club memberships, the charity board positions, the professional networks. All of it would crumble once this story spread through our interconnected community. She paused at the threshold, perhaps hoping for some miraculous intervention, some way to undo the damage that had been done. But there was no going back from this level of exposure. The evidence was too clear, the witnesses too numerous, the betrayal too complete. As the doors closed behind her fleeing figure, the ballroom erupted in animated conversation. Guests clustered around tables, dissecting every detail of what they'd witnessed, sharing their own observations about Evelyn's behavior throughout the evening. My mother approached with tears in her eyes, her maternal instincts finally understanding the depth of pain I'd been hiding. "Emily, sweetheart, why didn't you tell us? We could have helped you through this." "I needed to handle it my way, Mom," I said, accepting her embrace but feeling emotionally drained despite my victory. Some battles have to be fought alone. The next 72 hours unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of consequences. Marcus, true to his word, ended his engagement that very night. He packed Evelyn's belongings and left them outside her apartment with a note explaining that any further contact would be handled through his attorney. The news spread through our social media networks with viral speed. Screenshots of the evidence appeared on private group chats, shared with captions expressing shock and outrage. Evelyn's professional reputation crumbled as colleagues distanced themselves from someone capable of such elaborate deception. Her marketing firm conducted a quiet investigation and discovered she'd been using company resources for personal matters, including printing fake medical documents and coordinating her deceptive schemes during work hours. The termination was swift and absolute, with no possibility of positive references for future employment. John faced his own reckoning as friends and family processed his role in the betrayal. His business partnerships suffered as colleagues questioned his integrity, wondering what other lies he might be telling in professional settings. The man who had seemed so confident and successful revealed himself to be capable of systematic deception, causing people to re-evaluate every interaction they'd ever had with him. But while watching Evelyn's downfall provided a certain satisfaction, I discovered that revenge, no matter how perfectly executed, couldn't heal the deeper wounds of betrayal. The hollow victory left me emotionally exhausted and questioning everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and human nature. Dr. Sarah Chen's office became my sanctuary in the weeks that followed. The therapist's calm demeanor and insightful questions helped me navigate the complex emotions that came with simultaneously achieving justice and losing my marriage. Her office, decorated with soft blues and greens, became the place where I slowly began to rebuild my sense of self. "Revenge can provide closure," Dr. Chen explained during one of our sessions, "but healing requires a different kind of work. It requires forgiving yourself for the trust you gave to someone who didn't deserve it." The counseling sessions revealed layers of trauma I hadn't even recognized. The gaslighting, the subtle manipulation, the way John had made me question my own perceptions. All of it had left deeper scars than the simple act of infidelity. Recovery meant learning to trust my instincts again, to recognize the warning signs I'd missed, and to rebuild my self-worth independent of any romantic relationship. My true friends rallied around me with the kind of support that restored my faith in human decency. Sarah from college spent countless evenings with me, helping me pack away reminders of my marriage while sharing stories that made me laugh despite everything. My sister Claire flew in from Seattle and stayed for 2 weeks, her practical nature helping me navigate the legal and financial complexities of divorce. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly straightforward. John, perhaps recognizing the futility of fighting someone who had orchestrated such a comprehensive exposure of his lies, agreed to a settlement that was more than fair. His guilt over the public humiliation made him surprisingly generous with assets and apologetic in his communications. 6 months after the wedding that changed everything, I sat in my new apartment, a sun-filled space that felt like hope made tangible. The walls were painted in colors I'd chosen alone, decorated with art that reflected my personal taste rather than compromise. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. The story of Evelyn's exposure had become legendary in our social circles, a cautionary tale that mothers told their daughters about recognizing manipulation and trusting their instincts. Her name became synonymous with the kind of calculated cruelty that destroys innocent people for selfish gain. Evelyn herself had seemingly vanished from our community entirely. Rumors suggested she'd moved to another city, changed her name, or retreated to family in a different state. Whatever the truth, her absence felt like a wound finally healing, a toxicity removed from the environment we all shared. Marcus, meanwhile, had begun the slow process of rebuilding his life. We'd maintained occasional contact through encrypted messages, two survivors of the same emotional disaster supporting each other's healing. His recovery seemed faster than mine, perhaps because his betrayal had been exposed and ended before he'd legally bound himself to his manipulator. As I reflected on that devastating wedding day, I realized that while Evelyn had failed to steal my husband or destroy my life, she had inadvertently given me something valuable, the knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. The woman who had orchestrated such perfect revenge was someone I barely recognized, yet someone I was proud to have become. The perfect life I'd thought I wanted had been an illusion, built on foundations of deception and compromise. The life I was building now was smaller, quieter, but completely authentic. And that, I realized, was worth far more than any fairy tale ending. If this story of perfect wedding day revenge had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Emily raised her glass as the signal, watching Evelyn's confidence crumble as those envelopes were distributed. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.
I'm Emma Johnson, 32, and I spent my entire life preparing to lead our family's marketing consultancy business. My parents built the company from nothing, and I dedicated everything to its success. Then one day, they announced my younger sister Madison would be CEO instead of me. I walked away from the business I helped build, and they lost a $1 million deal I'd been cultivating for years. If you've ever felt undervalued by the people who should believe in you most, stick around. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to walk away to find your true worth. Growing up in Chicago, our household always revolved around Johnson Marketing Consultants, the business my parents Robert and Catherine started the year before I was born. Some of my earliest memories are sitting in my dad's office, coloring on the back of old marketing briefs while he took client calls. Our family business was more than just a company. It was like another sibling demanding constant attention. Madison came along 2 years after me, and even as kids, our differences were apparent. I was the serious one who loved numbers and strategy games. By age 10, I was reading business magazines and asking questions about client accounts. Madison was more free-spirited, gravitating toward art and fashion. She'd spend hours designing outfits for her dolls while I'd be creating mock advertising campaigns for my stuffed animals. Emma has the Johnson business sense. My dad would proudly tell clients when I'd make precocious comments about their marketing materials. I soaked up this praise and shaped my identity around it. Meanwhile, my mom would showcase Madison's artistic projects, cooing over her creative eye and people skills. Both of us received affirmation, but looking back, I can see the subtle grooming that was happening. During high school, when other kids were hanging out at the mall, I was interning at our family business every summer. I organized filing systems, sat in on client meetings, and even contributed ideas that sometimes made it into actual campaigns. By contrast, Madison went to summer art camps and later worked retail jobs at trendy boutiques. Our parents never pressured her to join the business the way they did with me, but they always said things like, "When you girls run the company someday?" Assuming we both shared the same dream. I structured my entire education around preparing to lead Johnson Marketing. I chose Northwestern University specifically for their renowned marketing program, graduating with honors. Then I completed my MBA at Columbia, specializing in digital marketing strategies and business development. During those 6 years, I also interned at major marketing firms in New York, building connections and learning systems our family business could benefit from. Madison's path was different. She initially pursued fashion design but switched to business administration in her sophomore year. She graduated from University of Illinois with a good, but not exceptional record. While I was completing my MBA, she worked at a few startups in Chicago, gaining some experience but nothing comparable to my deliberate career pathing. When I returned to Chicago after my MBA, I immediately joined the family business full-time. My parents welcomed me with a respectable but middle management position as marketing strategist. I had hoped for something more senior given my qualifications, but I understood I needed to prove myself in the family context. For the next 2 years, I worked tirelessly to modernize our operations. I implemented digital analytics, refreshed our client acquisition strategy, and brought in 3 major accounts that increased our annual revenue by 32%. My parents were impressed but not surprised. This was what they had raised me to do. Madison joined the company a year after me, initially in a client relations role that played to her interpersonal strengths. To everyone's surprise, including mine, she took to the business world with unexpected enthusiasm. The charisma that had made her popular in school translated well to client meetings. Where I excelled at strategy and execution, Madison shined in presentations and networking events. For a while, it seemed perfect. We complemented each other's strengths, and the business grew faster than ever before. Clients appreciated my detailed work and Madison's personable approach. Our parents beamed with pride at having both daughters in the company, though I couldn't help noticing they often credited Madison for the new accounts I had largely secured. "You two are the future of this company," my father would say, raising a toast at our quarterly success dinners. But I was the one staying until midnight finalizing proposals, the one sacrificing weekends to perfect pitch decks, the one who had dedicated my entire life to this moment. I believed the CEO position would ultimately be mine, with Madison perhaps heading up client relations or creative services. After all, I had the experience, the education, and the track record. It seemed like the natural order of things. How wrong I was. As the months turned into years, I continued cementing my position within Johnson Marketing Consultants. My innovative strategies transformed how we approached client campaigns, bringing us into the digital age when many similar-sized agencies were still relying on traditional methods. I developed our proprietary analytics dashboard that gave clients real-time insights into their campaign performance, something that immediately set us apart from competitors. One of my proudest achievements was the Riverstone Hotels campaign. The regional hotel chain had been losing market share to Airbnb and needed a complete brand overhaul. I designed a multi-platform strategy emphasizing their local expertise and authentic experiences, complete with user-generated content from satisfied guests. The campaign increased their bookings by 47% in just 6 months, and they signed a 3-year contract extension worth $500,000 annually. Success stories like this became my calling card. I wasn't just implementing tactics. I was developing a unique methodology that would later become the foundation of my own business approach. Clients started specifically requesting me for their accounts, something that brought mixed reactions from my parents. They were proud, certainly, but I sometimes caught them redirecting clients to work with our team rather than just me. My dedication came at a cost. While Madison maintained an active social life, dating regularly and maintaining close friendships, I poured myself into the business. Weekends were for catching up on industry trends or preparing for Monday meetings. Vacations were rare, and when they happened, I'd still check emails and take client calls. My last relationship ended when Tyler, my boyfriend of 2 years, said he felt like he was dating Johnson Marketing with Emma as its spokesperson. It hurt, but I understood. The business was my priority. When Madison completed her MBA part-time while working at the company, our parents threw her a lavish graduation party. "Now both our girls have the credentials to lead," my mother announced proudly. I smiled through gritted teeth, knowing that credentials on paper didn't equal the years of hands-on experience and proven results I had delivered. The shifting dynamics became more apparent when my parents started assigning Madison to high-profile new client pitches, despite my superior track record in closing deals. "Madison has a way with people," my father explained when I questioned this decision. "Clients respond to her energy." When I pointed out my higher conversion rate, he dismissed it. "Numbers aren't everything in this business, Emma." Despite these frustrations, I remained committed. My biggest project was cultivating a relationship with Harper Industries, a rapidly growing tech company that needed comprehensive marketing services as they expanded nationally. Over 2 years, I nurtured this connection, taking their CMO Rachel to lunch regularly, sending their team relevant industry insights, and occasionally providing free consultations on smaller projects to demonstrate our value. This careful relationship building was about to pay off. Rachel had confidentially shared that Harper was planning to consolidate all their marketing with a single agency, a contract worth at least $1 million annually for a minimum 3-year term. They were impressed with my strategic approach and innovative ideas, and while they were still evaluating other agencies, Rachel had made it clear we were the frontrunner. This could transform our business, I told my parents, presenting the detailed brief I had prepared for the final pitch meeting. Harper Industries could be our biggest client ever, and they specifically appreciate our data-driven approach. I had already assembled a dedicated team and developed preliminary campaign concepts based on my extensive knowledge of their business. My father nodded appreciatively as he reviewed my presentation. This is impressive work, Emma. Let's have Madison take a look at this too and get her input before the final pitch. I felt a familiar twinge of irritation, but pushed it aside. Sure, her perspective could be valuable, but remember that I've been working with Rachel and her team for 2 years. I understand their needs and vision intimately. Of course, my mother interjected, but Madison brings a fresh perspective that clients find engaging. We should leverage both your strengths. What started as getting Madison's input quickly evolved into my parents suggesting she lead the pitch presentation, with me providing the strategic details. When I objected, my father's response was telling. Emma, you're too emotionally invested in this account. Madison can present more objectively. Too emotionally invested. The phrase rattled around in my head for days. Was dedication to client success now considered a liability? I had spent countless hours learning everything about Harper Industries, from their company culture to their 5-year expansion plans.
Of course I was invested.
Meanwhile, I was developing a comprehensive expansion strategy for Johnson Marketing itself. With the anticipated Harper Industries contract, we would have the financial stability to open a second office in Denver, tapping into the growing tech market there. I had researched office spaces, projected hiring needs, and created a detailed 3-year growth plan. This wasn't just about growing our client list. It was about evolving the entire business for long-term success. When I presented this vision to my parents, they seemed impressed but non-committal. Let's secure Harper Industries first before making any big moves, my father said prudently. I agreed with the practical approach, not knowing that the biggest shock was yet to come. The Harper Industries pitch was scheduled for the following month. Everything was falling into place for both the pitch and what I assumed would be my eventual promotion to a more senior leadership role. After all, bringing in $1 million client while simultaneously developing the company's expansion strategy surely demonstrated my readiness to lead. I remember telling my friend Amanda over our rare Friday night dinner, I think this is finally it. After the Harper deal closes, they'll have to acknowledge I'm ready to take over when they retire. They'd be crazy not to, she agreed, raising her glass in a toast. To the future CEO of Johnson Marketing. If only she knew how wrong we both were. 3 weeks before the Harper Industries pitch, my parents invited Madison and me to dinner at Gibson's, the upscale steakhouse they reserved for special occasions. The invitation came with unusual formality, my father calling rather than texting as he normally would. We have something important to discuss with both of you, he said, his voice carrying a weight that made my stomach tighten. It's about the future of the company. I spent the day before dinner reviewing our company financials and updating my strategic growth plan. If this was the succession discussion I'd been anticipating, I wanted to be fully prepared to accept the leadership role I'd been working toward my entire life. Gibson's was busy that Thursday evening, but our table was ready in the private dining section when we arrived. My mother had already ordered champagne, which further confirmed this was no ordinary family dinner. Madison arrived last, apologizing for the traffic and looking slightly flustered in a way that would later make sense to me. After the usual small talk and ordering, my father cleared his throat and reached for my mother's hand. As you girls know, your mother and I have been discussing our retirement plans. Johnson Marketing has been our life's work, but we're ready to start stepping back and enjoying more time together. My heart raced. This was it. the moment I'd been preparing for since childhood. We've thought long and hard about the future leadership of the company, my mother continued, her eyes moving between Madison and me. Both of you have contributed so much, in different but valuable ways. I nodded, maintaining a composed smile while mentally reviewing the transition timeline I'd drafted. 3 months of overlapping leadership would be ideal, with my parents gradually reducing their involvement while I implemented my vision for the company's growth. My father raised his glass. We'd like to toast to the future of Johnson Marketing Consultants and to our new Chief Executive Officer. The pause lasted only seconds, but it felt eternal. Madison. The champagne turned bitter in my mouth. I must have misheard. Madison will be taking over as CEO effective next quarter, my mother elaborated, beaming at my sister. Emma, we'd like you to continue heading up strategy as our Chief Strategy Officer, reporting to Madison. Madison looked simultaneously thrilled and uncomfortable, avoiding my eyes as our parents continued outlining their vision for the transition. The remainder of the dinner passed in a blur. I smiled mechanically, nodded at appropriate intervals, and even managed to congratulate my sister when directly prompted. Inside, I was imploding. The drive home was a haze of disbelief and hurt. I kept replaying my father's words, searching for logic in a decision that seemed to defy it. Madison had been with the company for 4 years compared to my 5, had less relevant experience before joining, and hadn't spearheaded any major accounts independently. By every objective measure. Education, experience, client acquisition, revenue generation, I had proven myself more qualified. Sleep evaded me that night. I tossed in bed, mentally cataloging my contributions to the company versus Madison's, searching for what I had missed. By morning, hurt had crystallized into determination to understand their reasoning. I requested a private meeting with my parents the following day. They agreed, looking slightly uneasy as I entered my father's office. I need to understand. I began, working to keep my voice steady. What factors led to choosing Madison over me for the CEO position? My parents exchanged a glance before my father leaned forward. Emma, you're an exceptional strategist and analyst. The company wouldn't be where it is without your contributions. But, I prompted. But leadership is about more than just strategy and numbers, my mother interjected. Madison has a natural ability to inspire people, to build consensus, to represent the company in a way that attracts both clients and talent. And I don't. My father sighed. You can be intense, Emma. Brilliant, but intense. You focus so much on results that sometimes you overlook the human element. Madison balances ambition with approachability. So my dedication, my intensity as you call it, is being held against me? The injustice burned in my chest. I've sacrificed everything for this company. That's part of what concerns us, my mother said gently. A good leader needs balance, perspective. Madison has developed a more well-rounded approach to both business and life. The subtext was clear. My all-consuming commitment to the company, the very quality they had encouraged throughout my life, was now deemed a liability rather than an asset. The conversation continued in this vein, with my parents attempting to soften the blow while inadvertently twisting the knife deeper. We believe you two will make an excellent leadership team, my father concluded. Your strengths complement each other perfectly. But I wasn't interested in being the support structure for my sister's ascension. And if I don't want to be CSO under Madison's leadership? Another telling glance between my parents. We hope you'll reconsider that position, my mother said carefully. The company needs you, Emma. I left the meeting with perfect clarity about 2 painful truths. My parents had always envisioned Madison as the eventual leader despite my superior qualifications, and no amount of achievement on my part would have changed that predetermined outcome. That night, I called Amanda in tears. They said I'm too intense, too focused on results, I told her between sobs. Apparently, sacrificing everything for the business makes me less qualified to run it, not more. That's absurd, she responded indignantly. They're punishing you for your dedication. What hurts most is realizing that nothing I did would have changed this outcome. They always saw Madison as the face of the company's future, regardless of my contributions. For the next week, I went through the motions at work, avoiding both Madison and my parents whenever possible. Madison attempted to discuss the situation several times, sending meeting invites to talk about our future collaboration that I systematically declined. The Harper Industries pitch was approaching, and despite my personal turmoil, I continued refining the presentation. This client represented years of relationship building, and I couldn't bring myself to abandon that effort, even as I contemplated my future at the company. One evening, Madison cornered me as I was leaving the office. "Emma, please, we need to talk about this," she implored. "I know you're upset, and you have every right to be." I regarded my sister coldly. "Did you know? Before the dinner?" She hesitated just long enough to confirm my suspicion. "They discussed it with me the week before," she admitted. "I told them they should reconsider, that you'd been working toward this longer. But you accepted anyway," I interrupted. "I thought we could lead together," she said weakly. "Your expertise with your what? Your people skills? Your fresh perspective?" The bitterness I'd been suppressing erupted. "You've been with the company 4 years, Madison. I've been preparing for this my entire life." "I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry it happened this way." The sincerity in her apology only made it worse. Madison wasn't a villain. She was simply the beneficiary of our parents' inexplicable preference. But knowing that didn't lessen the sting of betrayal or the fundamental unfairness of the situation. That night, I made my decision. The morning after my hallway confrontation with Madison, I requested another meeting with my parents, this time with a clear purpose. They agreed to meet after the workday, perhaps hoping I'd had time to accept their decision. The conference room felt unusually cold as we gathered. I had prepared meticulously for this conversation, just as I would for any critical business meeting. My father started with small talk about an ongoing client project, but I gently interrupted. "I've been reflecting on our discussion about the leadership transition," I began, my voice calm and measured. "And I have some direct questions that I need honest answers to." My parents nodded, though I noticed my mother's fingers nervously adjusting her bracelet. "When did you first decide Madison would be CEO instead of me? Was this a recent decision based on our performance, or was this always the plan?" The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough, but I waited for them to verbalize it. My father cleared his throat. "We've always seen different strengths in both of you. Madison has always had a certain presence that naturally lends itself to leadership. So this was predetermined," I stated flatly. Regardless of my accomplishments, my dedication, my results, the decision was made long before either of us joined the company officially. "That's not entirely fair, Emma," my mother interjected. "We've always valued your contributions tremendously. But not enough to consider me for the role I've been working toward my entire life," I countered. "Let me ask something else. What specific leadership qualities does Madison possess that I lack?" My parents exchanged their characteristic glance before my father responded. "Madison builds consensus naturally. She's diplomatic in situations where you might be more direct. Clients and employees respond to her approachability. So I'm too direct, too intense." I repeated their earlier criticism. "Can you point to any instance where my directness has cost us a client or damaged the business?" They couldn't, of course. My directness had always been in service of results. "Emma," my mother said gently, "leadership isn't just about results. It's about inspiring people, creating a vision others want to follow." "The Harper Industries account," I responded. "That's a vision I created and nurtured over 2 years. Our potential expansion to Denver, another vision I developed. The analytics platform that differentiates us from competitors, my vision again. Those are strategic initiatives," my father conceded. "And they're valuable. That's why we want you as CSO. Working under Madison," I added. "Someone with less experience, less proven success, and let's be honest, less commitment to the business." My mother frowned. "That's unfair to your sister. She's dedicated to Johnson Marketing. But not at the expense of everything else, right?" Isn't that what you implied last time? That my complete dedication is somehow a liability? The conversation continued in circles, my parents unwilling to acknowledge the fundamental unfairness of their decision while simultaneously unable to provide concrete justifications beyond vague references to Madison's leadership qualities. Finally, I placed a folder on the table. This is my resignation, effective immediately. The shock on their faces would have been satisfying under different circumstances. Emma, you can't be serious, my father stammered. The Harper pitch is in 2 weeks. The company needs you. I've prepared comprehensive notes on the Harper account and strategy, I replied coolly. Madison's leadership qualities should be sufficient to close the deal. This is rash, my mother pleaded. Take some time to think about this. We can discuss adjusting roles, compensation. This isn't about money or titles, I interrupted. It's about recognition and respect for what I've contributed. It's about fairness. My father's expression hardened slightly. Life isn't always fair, Emma. In business, we sometimes have to accept decisions we don't agree with. You're right, I conceded. And my decision is to no longer work for a company that fundamentally undervalues my contributions. I won't be reporting to someone who was handed a position I earned. The meeting ended with my parents in disbelief and me with a strange sense of calm. The decision that had kept me awake for nights now felt inevitable, even right. Outside the conference room, Madison was waiting, her expression making it clear she'd heard at least part of our conversation. You're leaving? She asked, eyes wide with dismay. Emma, please don't do this. We can work together. I value your expertise more than anyone. This isn't about you personally, Madison, I said, surprised by the gentleness in my voice. This is about recognizing my own worth when others won't. The Harper account, she began, will have to succeed or fail without me. I finished for her. Consider it your first test as CEO. Cleaning out my office was surreal. 5 years of work life fit into 3 cardboard boxes. Awards for campaigns I developed, client testimonials, the leather portfolio my parents had given me when I joined the company, a gift that now felt hollow. Jessica, my assistant who had become a friend, helped me pack while fighting back tears. What will you do now? She asked, carefully wrapping my Northwestern Alumni Award. I'm not sure yet, I admitted. But I know what I won't do. Continue to pour myself into a place that doesn't value that investment. Several other team members stopped by, expressing shock and concern about my departure. I was touched by their genuine reactions, particularly from the junior staff I had mentored. Thomas, our newest analyst whom I'd personally trained, looked devastated. You taught me everything I know about digital strategy, he said. It won't be the same without you. Before leaving, I had one final stop to make. Rachel, the CMO of Harper Industries, deserved to hear about my departure directly from me rather than through a corporate email. I called her from my personal phone. You're leaving? She asked, shocked after I explained the situation. Emma, our entire team has been working with you specifically. The presentation, the strategy, that was all you. I know, and I apologize for the disruption, I said sincerely. The company still has talented strategists who can execute the vision we discussed. Rachel's pause spoke volumes. We selected Johnson Marketing largely because of your approach and understanding of our needs, she said carefully. This changes things significantly. I didn't try to persuade her either way. Professional ethics prevented me from actively sabotaging my former company, but I also wouldn't false sell capabilities that were walking out the door with me. As I carry my boxes to the elevator, my father intercepted me. Emma, please reconsider, he urged, looking genuinely distressed for the first time. We can work through this. I looked at him, the man who had taught me everything about business only to overlook me when it mattered most. I've reconsidered my place here for the past 2 weeks, I told him. My decision is final. Madison appeared in the hallway, tears streaming down her face. Don't leave like this, she pleaded. Not because of me. This isn't just about you, I said, softening slightly at her obvious distress. It's about recognizing when a situation can't be fixed and having the courage to start over. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped in with my boxes, turning to face my family one last time as the doors closed on that chapter of my life. The first week after leaving Johnson Marketing passed in a blur of emotional extremes. I fluctuated between empowering confidence in my decision and paralyzing doubt. Who was I without the company that had defined my identity for so long? The question haunted my sleepless nights in the hotel where I'd temporarily relocated. Chicago suddenly felt too small, too suffocating with memories and the possibility of running into my family or former clients. After 10 days of limbo, I made another life-changing decision. I would move to Denver, the city I had researched so thoroughly for Johnson Marketing's expansion that never happened. I found a modest one-bedroom apartment in the RiNo district, a far cry from my spacious Chicago condo. The bare walls and minimal furniture reflected my stripped-down existence. Starting over at 32 wasn't part of my meticulously planned life trajectory, but there was an unexpected freedom in the blank slate before me. The first month tested my resolve daily. I would wake up reaching for a work phone that wasn't there, momentarily forgetting I no longer had client emergencies to manage or team members to direct. The silence was both terrifying and liberating. I keep waiting for the regret to hit, I confessed to Amanda during one of our daily phone calls. But mostly I feel relief mixed with this strange emptiness. The emptiness is just space for whatever comes next, she replied with characteristic wisdom. You're not defined by that company, Emma. You never were. Financially, I had enough savings to sustain me for 6 months without income, a cushion I had built planning for emergencies, never imagining this particular scenario. Still, watching my bank balance decrease without corresponding deposits created a low-grade anxiety I couldn't shake. By the second month, I began reaching out to my professional network. Not for job opportunities. The thought of working for another family business or marketing agency held no appeal, but to reconnect as an independent consultant. Years of relationship building proved valuable as former industry colleagues responded warmly to my new status. Patricia, a former client who had moved to a larger company, was the first to offer me contract work. We need someone to evaluate our current marketing strategy, she explained over coffee. Someone who isn't afraid to be direct about what's working and what isn't. I immediately thought of you. That first project was modest in scope and compensation, but it provided something more valuable than money, validation that my skills and approach had value independent of the Johnson name. I transformed Patricia's marketing department over 6 weeks, implementing systems similar to those I developed at Johnson Marketing. You've accomplished more as one person than the agency we fired did with an entire team, Patricia marveled during our final meeting. Would you consider taking on another project for our events division? Word spread quickly. Patricia recommended me to colleagues, who recommended me to others. By the 4th month, I was turning down projects and carefully selecting clients whose needs aligned with my strengths and interests. Working from my apartment became impractical as I started requiring meeting space for client presentations. With growing confidence, I leased a small office in a co-working space. The space wasn't impressive, just a private room with a desk, 2 client chairs, and a small conference table, but it was mine, independent of family legacy or connections. I named my nascent business Summit Marketing Solutions, a nod to both the Denver landscape and the peak performance I aimed to deliver. Jessica, my former assistant from Johnson Marketing, called unexpectedly during my 5th month in Denver. I hope you don't mind me reaching out, she began hesitantly. Things are different since you left. Different how? I asked, curious despite myself. Madison is trying, but she doesn't have your strategic vision, Jessica explained. The analytics platform you developed isn't being utilized properly. Clients are noticing the difference. I felt a complex mix of vindication and concern. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, genuinely meaning it. Despite everything, I didn't wish failure on the business my parents had built. Actually, Jessica continued, I was wondering if you might be hiring. I've learned so much from you, and I'd rather continue that education. The idea of having an employee hadn't occurred to me yet. My business was growing, but was it stable enough to support staff? The more I considered it, the more Jessica's skills would complement my client work perfectly. "Let me put together an offer," I told her. "I can't match corporate benefits yet, but I can promise you'll be integral to building something new." 2 weeks later, Jessica arrived in Denver, bringing her organizational prowess and client management skills to Summit Marketing. With her handling operations and client communications, I could focus entirely on strategy and business development. "We need a proper website," Jessica announced on her third day. "I've drafted content based on your methodology, and I've researched designers who specialize in marketing consultancies." Her initiative confirmed I'd made the right decision. Together, we began building Summit Marketing's identity, distinct from Johnson Marketing but incorporating the best of what I'd learned there while discarding the limitations. By the 6-month mark, Summit Marketing Solutions had 8 regular clients, a growing reputation for data-driven strategies with measurable results, and a distinctive approach I called elevation marketing, helping clients rise above competitive noise through authentic, analytics-supported storytelling. I was working as hard as ever, but the satisfaction was incomparable. Every decision was mine, every success directly attributable to my vision and execution. The validation I'd sought from my parents came instead from clients who renewed contracts and referred colleagues. One evening, as Jessica and I worked late finalizing a presentation, she hesitated before asking, "Have you spoken to your family since leaving?" "No," I admitted. "My parents have called several times, but I'm not ready for that conversation yet." "And Madison?" I sighed. "She texts occasionally. Generic things like, 'Hope you're well,' or 'thinking of you today.'" I respond similarly. We're in a polite holding pattern. Jessica nodded thoughtfully. "Thomas from the analytics team said Harper Industries canceled their contract with Johnson after the initial 3 months. Apparently, the execution didn't match what you had proposed." The news didn't surprise me, but didn't bring the satisfaction I might have expected either. "That's business," I said simply. "Results matter." What I didn't share with Jessica was how occasionally, in quiet moments, I wondered if walking away had been too extreme. Not because I questioned my worth or the injustice of the situation, but because family bonds, however strained, remained part of my identity too. Those reflections were interrupted by news that would change everything again. An industry publication ran a feature on marketing innovators reshaping client expectations, with Summit Marketing Solutions highlighted for our elevation marketing approach. The publicity brought a flood of inquiries, including one from Westfield Corporation, a national commercial real estate developer with marketing needs across multiple platforms. "They want a complete marketing overhaul," Jessica reported excitedly. "Digital, traditional, internal communications, everything." The initial contract would be $2 million over 3 years. $2 million. Double what the Harper Industries contract would have been. The symmetry wasn't lost on me, nor was the irony that I might never have pursued this independent path if I'd been named CEO of Johnson Marketing. As Summit Marketing continued growing, I received occasional updates about my former company through industry contacts. Johnson Marketing was struggling to maintain its client base, particularly after losing Harper Industries. The innovative edge I had brought was noticeably absent from their recent campaigns. 7 months after my departure, an unexpected visitor arrived at my office. My father, looking older and more tired than I remembered, stood awkwardly in our reception area. "Your assistant said you might have a few minutes," he said, the confidence that had once defined him noticeably diminished. Jessica had warned me he was there, giving me the option to decline the meeting. But curiosity and a small, persistent thread of familial connection had prompted me to agree. "I have exactly 15 minutes before my next call," I said, gesturing him into my office. "What brings you to Denver?" My father looked out of place in my minimalist office, his expensive suit contrasting with the startup simplicity I had deliberately cultivated at Summit Marketing. He took the client chair I offered, glancing around at the space that represented my new, independent success. "Your business seems to be doing well," he began, nodding toward the industry award I'd recently received that sat on my desk. "The article about your elevation marketing approach was impressive." "Thank you," I replied neutrally. But I assume you didn't fly to Denver to compliment my press coverage. He sighed, the weight of the past months evident in the new lines around his eyes. Harper Industries terminated their contract after the initial 3-month trial period. Rachel was quite direct about the reason. The execution didn't match the strategy that had been promised. Your strategy. I kept my expression neutral despite the vindication his words brought. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate doesn't begin to cover it, he continued. The $1 million deal you cultivated would have transformed our business. Instead, we lost not only Harper but 3 other clients who were closely monitoring that relationship. Part of me wanted to remind him that this was precisely the outcome I had warned about, that my value to the company had been greater than they recognized. But the defeat in his posture made such points unnecessarily cruel. Business relationships are often tied to specific people, I said instead. That's why succession planning is so critical in service industries. The subtle dig wasn't lost on him. We made a mistake, Emma. A significant one. His admission hung in the air between us. After months of anger and hurt, hearing him acknowledge their error should have been satisfying. Instead, it felt hollow, coming only after financial consequences had forced the recognition. Madison is struggling, he continued when I didn't immediately respond. She has many strengths, but the strategic direction, the vision for where we need to go next, that was always your domain. And now it's my business, I replied, gesturing to the office around us. He nodded slowly. Your mother and I have been following your success from afar. The Westfield Corporation contract was quite a coup for a new consultancy. So they knew about that too. The Denver business community was smaller than I'd realized, or perhaps they'd been monitoring my progress more closely than I'd suspected. What exactly are you here for, Dad? I asked directly, conscious of my mentioned 15-minute limit. He straightened in his chair, some of his old business acumen returning to his demeanor. I'm here to propose a collaboration. Not a return to Johnson Marketing. He raised his hand as I began to protest. But a strategic partnership between our companies. Your innovation combined with our established client base and resources. The proposal was unexpected. A partnership would require mutual respect and trust, I pointed out. Those were lacking in our previous arrangement. We've learned a painful lesson about your value, he admitted. The company has lost 27% of its revenue since your departure. Madison is considering stepping down as CEO. This news genuinely surprised me. After only 7 months. She recognizes that the role doesn't align with her strengths. She's excellent with client relations and creative direction, but the comprehensive strategic planning, the innovation pipeline, the business development, she's drowning trying to fill your shoes. A complicated mix of emotions washed over me. Vindication, concern for my sister despite everything, and a lingering anger that it took financial decline for my parents to recognize what should have been obvious from the beginning. I appreciate your candor, I said carefully, but Summit Marketing is thriving independently. We're projecting 7-figure revenue in our first year, with minimal overhead and no legacy systems to maintain. My father nodded, a hint of pride breaking through his concern. You've proven your capabilities beyond any doubt. That's precisely why a partnership would benefit both companies. You maintain your independence while leveraging our resources and client history. I'll consider it, I conceded, more to end the conversation than from genuine interest. Send me a formal proposal, and I'll review it with my team. As he stood to leave, he hesitated. Your mother misses you. We both do. Business aside, you're our daughter. The personal appeal caught me off guard. For months, I had compartmentalized my feelings about my family, focusing entirely on building my new life and business. The reminder of our personal connection beyond professional disappointments touched a part of me I'd been working to ignore. I need more time, I said honestly. The business decision about partnership is separate from personal reconciliation. He accepted this with a nod. Fair enough. The proposal will be on your desk by the end of the week. And Emma, I'm proud of what you've built here. I should have said that more when you were building things for us. After he left, I sat alone in my office, processing the conversation. Jessica knocked gently before entering with a cup of tea, a habit she developed whenever she sensed I needed thinking space. "How did it go?" she asked, placing the tea on my desk. "Apparently, Johnson Marketing is struggling without me," I summarized. "Madison wants to step down as CEO, and they're proposing a strategic partnership." Jessica raised her eyebrows. "Are you considering it?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Professionally, there's little upside for us. We're growing rapidly on our own terms. But personally, they're still your family," Jessica finished for me. The following week brought more surprising developments. Summit Marketing secured a meeting with Altera Group, a major competitor to Harper Industries that had been watching our work with Westfield Corporation. Their marketing director, Stephanie, was refreshingly direct during our initial conversation. "We've been impressed with your analytics-driven approach," she explained. "Our current agency provides beautiful creative, but can't demonstrate ROI with the precision we need. We'd like to discuss a potential $2 million annual contract." $2 million annually, not over 3 years. It would be the largest client in Summit's brief history, pushing us firmly into mid-sized agency territory and necessitating immediate staff expansion. The timing, coinciding with my father's partnership proposal, seemed almost orchestrated by fate. As promised, my father's formal partnership proposal arrived, professionally bound and comprehensive. The terms were surprisingly favorable, acknowledging Summit's independence while offering resource sharing and client referrals. Most telling was the proposed governance structure. Summit would maintain complete autonomy, with optional participation in Johnson Marketing's strategic planning. While I was still considering these parallel opportunities, Madison called. Unlike my father's surprise visit, her approach was direct. "I'm stepping down as CEO," she said without preamble when I answered. "I wanted you to hear it from me before the announcement goes out." "Dad mentioned you were considering it," I replied. "Are you sure this is what you want?" Her laugh held no humor. "What I want? Emma, I never wanted to be CEO in the first place. I accepted because I thought we'd be leading together, with your strategic brilliance balancing my people skills." This revelation stunned me. "You never wanted the position?" "Not really," she admitted. "I enjoy client relationships and creative direction. The operational side, the constant pressure of strategic decisions, that's always been your strength, not mine. I accepted because Mom and Dad were so convinced it was the right structure." I sat with this new information, recalibrating my understanding of the past year. "Why didn't you say something when I confronted you about it?" "You were so hurt, so angry," she said softly. "And rightfully so. I should have declined, insisted they reconsider you for the role. I let myself believe their vision that we'd be perfect co-leaders, with me as the figurehead and you as the strategic force. It was naive and unfair to you." The sincere regret in her voice cracked something in my carefully constructed emotional wall. "I'm sorry it's been difficult," I said, meaning it. "Running a company isn't easy under the best circumstances." "You're thriving at it," she pointed out. Summit Marketing is becoming an industry name while Johnson is struggling to maintain relevance. You were always the visionary, Emma. I just wish we had all acknowledged that sooner. As our conversation continued, the bitterness I had nursed for months began to dissolve, replaced by a more nuanced understanding. Madison hadn't plotted to usurp my position. She had been as much a pawn in our parents' flawed succession planning as I had been. "Have you seen Dad's partnership proposal?" she asked eventually. "I have. It's surprisingly equitable. He spent weeks on it," Madison revealed. "Consulted with attorneys, business advisors, even a family business psychologist. He wanted to get it right because he knows how badly they messed up before." The effort represented a level of recognition I had craved during my years at Johnson Marketing. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had to leave completely before my value was fully acknowledged. The following week brought the culmination of these parallel developments. Summit Marketing signed the Altera Group contract, cementing our position as a rising force in the industry. The same day, Madison's resignation as CEO of Johnson Marketing was announced publicly, with our father temporarily resuming leadership while seeking a new direction for the company. Industry publications noted the coincidental timing, speculating about connections between Johnson's leadership change and Summit's rapid rise. One article directly mentioned the million-dollar Harper Industries account that had followed key strategist Emma Johnson to her new venture, an inaccuracy I immediately had Jessica address with the publication, as Harper was not among Summit's clients. The correction was necessary not just for factual accuracy, but because of another development I was cautiously considering, a limited collaboration with Johnson Marketing on a project basis, starting with a joint pitch to a client seeking both the established reputation Johnson offered and the innovative approach Summit had become known for. It wouldn't be the full partnership my father had proposed, but rather a tentative first step toward possible professional reconciliation. The business case was sound. Johnson had historical data and established processes that would complement Summit's agility and innovation. For specific clients with complex needs, our combined strengths could provide unique value. Personal reconciliation was proceeding on a parallel but separate track. I had agreed to dinner with my parents and Madison during their next visit to Denver, not at my apartment or their hotel, but on neutral ground at a restaurant I had come to favor. Small steps toward rebuilding trust, both professionally and personally. As I reviewed the terms of the Altera contract in my expanding office, we had upgraded to a larger space to accommodate our growing team. I reflected on the journey of the past year. The million-dollar deal Johnson had lost had been painful for them, but transformative for me, forcing me to create something entirely my own rather than fitting into a predetermined role in someone else's vision. Jessica interrupted my reflections with news that would add another layer to our evolving story. Rachel from Harper Industries is on line 1. She says they're dissatisfied with their current agency and interested in discussing Summit services. The symmetry was almost too perfect. I picked up the phone, ready to write the next chapter on my own terms. 3 weeks after my conversation with Madison, my phone rang with her name on the caller ID. Our recent communications had been more frequent but still cautious, rebuilding our relationship one careful conversation at a time. "Can we meet?" she asked, her voice carrying an urgency that caught my attention. "I'm in Denver for the weekend. There's something I need to discuss with you in person." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near my apartment the following morning. I arrived early, securing a quiet corner table and ordering my usual Americano. Madison arrived precisely on time, looking simultaneously more relaxed and more mature than when I'd last seen her. The CEO role may have been a poor fit, but the experience had clearly shaped her. "Thanks for meeting me," she began after ordering a latte. "I've been doing a lot of reflecting since stepping down, and I owe you a more complete apology than I've given so far." "You don't need to." I started, but she gently interrupted.
Ido, Emma.
"I accepted a position that should have been yours, that you had earned through years of dedication and results. Whether I wanted it or not doesn't change the fact that I took something that rightfully belonged to you." Her directness surprised me. The Madison I remembered would have softened such statements, wrapped them in qualifiers and explanations. "The worst part," she continued, "is that I knew it wasn't right even as it was happening. I saw how hurt you were at that dinner, and I still went along with it because it was easier than challenging Mom and Dad." I took a sip of my coffee, considering her words. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I want to rebuild our relationship on honesty," she replied. "And because the company is at a crossroads. Dad is talking about selling Johnson Marketing." This was unexpected news. Selling? That wasn't mentioned in any of our recent discussions. Madison nodded. "It's a new development. After my resignation and several more client departures, he's questioning whether the company can recover its former position without." She hesitated. "Without you." "There are plenty of capable marketing executives who could revitalize the business," I pointed out. "None with your specific knowledge of our clients and methodology," she countered. "And none who care about the Johnson legacy the way you do, despite everything that happened." She wasn't wrong. Despite my anger and hurt, I had never wished for my parents' life work to dissolve. The business represented decades of their dedication, creativity, and perseverance, qualities they had instilled in me, even if they had failed to fully recognize them. "What are you suggesting?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. Nothing specific yet, Madison said carefully. Just opening a door to possibilities. Dad mentioned that you've been discussing limited collaboration on specific projects. Perhaps there's a broader conversation to be had about the future of both companies. I considered this as I watched people passing by the coffee shop window, going about their Saturday routines. The past year had transformed me in ways I was still discovering. The wounded, betrayed daughter who had fled Chicago had evolved into a confident business owner secure in her own capabilities and worth. That security gave me the freedom to consider options that might previously have felt like capitulation. I'm open to continuing the conversation, I said finally, but any arrangement would need to acknowledge Summit's independence and success. I won't be absorbed back into Johnson Marketing as if the past year never happened. Madison smiled, relief evident in her expression. That's more than fair. Your success with Summit has been remarkable, Emma. $2 million clients in less than a year is extraordinary. Our conversation shifted to lighter topics, her new role in client relations, my expanding office space, mutual friends from Chicago. For brief moments, it felt like the easy companionship we had shared before business complications had come between us. As we prepared to leave, Madison hesitated. Mom and Dad are struggling with more than just business challenges, she said quietly. They miss you. The family dinners, the holiday traditions, it's all different without you. I nodded, acknowledging the personal dimension that ran parallel to our professional situation. I miss aspects of our family too, I admitted. But trust takes time to rebuild. Would you consider joining us for dinner while I'm in town? Just the four of us, no business discussion unless you initiate it. The invitation represented another step in the gradual reconciliation process. Text me the details, I agreed. I'll be there. That dinner proved to be a turning point, not because of any dramatic revelations or emotional breakthroughs, but because of its surprising normalcy. We gathered at a restaurant I recommended, neutral territory that nonetheless allowed me to demonstrate my growing knowledge of Denver's culinary scene. My parents seemed genuinely interested in my life beyond Summit Marketing, my new apartment, the hiking trails I discovered, the local business organizations I joined. My mother, normally reserved with her emotions, reached for my hand as dessert was served. We are so proud of what you've built, Emma, she said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. And so sorry for our role in making it necessary for you to build it alone, without your family's support. The simple acknowledgement touched me more deeply than I had anticipated. For years, I had sought their recognition of my capabilities and contributions. That it came now, after I had proven myself independently, carried both sweetness and a lingering hint of sadness for what might have been. I wasn't entirely alone, I corrected gently. Jessica joined me from Johnson, and my network of industry contacts has been tremendously supportive. Nevertheless, my father added, we failed you as parents and as business mentors. The success you've achieved with Summit is entirely your own, and it's exceptional. These conversations began a new chapter in our family dynamics. The distance, both geographic and emotional, that I had established served us well, allowing interactions on more equal footing rather than within the parent-child, owner-employee hierarchies that had previously defined our relationship. Over the following months, Summit Marketing continued its impressive growth trajectory. We expanded to a full floor in our office building, growing from 2 to 15 employees as our client roster expanded. Rachel and the Harper Industries team did indeed become clients, appreciating the opportunity to work directly with me on their marketing strategy without the family business complications that had previously interfered. Johnson Marketing stabilized under my father's temporary leadership, though it didn't regain the innovative edge that had once differentiated it in the market. After much consideration, my parents decided against selling the company outright. Instead, we developed a more formal collaborative relationship between Summit and Johnson, leveraging complementary strengths for mutual benefit. The arrangement began with a joint pitch to Advanced Technologies, a client seeking both the established reputation Johnson offered and the innovative approach Summit had pioneered. Our combined proposal won against larger agencies, demonstrating the potential of our collaboration. This success led to more structured conversations about the future. Madison had found her niche in client relations and creative direction, areas where her natural charisma and aesthetic sensibilities shined. My father was ready for true retirement, not just the partial step back they had attempted previously. My mother, always the more administratively inclined partner, had already reduced her involvement to board oversight. After nearly 18 months of independence, I found myself in a position I could never have anticipated on that painful night I resigned. Considering a limited merger between Summit Marketing and Johnson Marketing Consultants, with myself as CEO of the combined entity and Madison as Chief Client Officer. The proposed structure would maintain Summit's brand and innovative methodology while incorporating Johnson's established client base and operational systems. Most importantly, the arrangement acknowledged the distinct value I had created with Summit rather than simply reabsorbing me into the family business. "You've created something remarkable with Summit," my father noted during one of our planning sessions. "This isn't about rescuing Johnson Marketing. It's about combining two successful entities in a way that makes both stronger." The shift in perspective was significant. No longer was I the daughter being given an opportunity in the family business. I was a successful entrepreneur bringing valuable assets and methodologies to a potential merger. The validation I had sought for years had come through the most unexpected path, by walking away and proving my worth independently. The negotiations were detailed and occasionally challenging, with all parties represented by independent counsel to ensure fairness. The resulting agreement maintained Summit's Denver headquarters while keeping Johnson's Chicago office as a satellite location. I would split my time between locations initially, with the goal of eventually consolidating leadership in Denver. Throughout this process, my personal relationships with my family continued healing in parallel. Regular video calls, occasional visits, and shared business interests rebuilt connections that had been severely damaged. The hurt wasn't erased. Some wounds leave permanent scars, but it was no longer the defining aspect of our relationship. One evening, as I was working late finalizing details of the merger agreement, Jessica brought me tea, as had become her custom. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. Rejoining the family business in any capacity is a big step after everything that happened. I appreciated her candor. She had witnessed my journey from the beginning and had a unique perspective on both my professional growth and personal healing. "It's not rejoining," I clarified. "It's creating something new that incorporates the best of both companies. And, importantly, it's on my terms this time." She nodded thoughtfully. "You've changed a lot in the past year and a half. The Emma who left Chicago would never have considered this arrangement. That Emma was still defining herself in relation to her family's approval," I acknowledged. "This Emma knows her worth regardless of external validation." This was perhaps the most profound lesson of my journey. True value comes not from titles or others' recognition, but from knowing your own capabilities and having the courage to honor them, even when it means walking away from what seems secure. The merger proceeded smoothly, with the new entity, Summit Johnson Marketing, launching with combined revenues exceeding our projections. Industry publications noted the unusual family business story, with several requesting interviews about our innovative approach to succession planning. We declined most, preferring to let our results speak for themselves. My relationship with Madison evolved into a true partnership, our complementary strengths creating a leadership dynamic that neither of us could have achieved alone. The sibling rivalry that had once defined us, fueled by our parents' flawed approach to succession, transformed into mutual respect and appreciation. My parents transitioned to advisory board roles, providing institutional knowledge while respecting the new direction Madison and I established. The distance created by my departure had paradoxically brought us closer, allowing adult relationships to replace the parent-child dynamics that had complicated our business interactions. Looking back on the tumultuous journey from overlooked daughter to independent entrepreneur to CEO on my own terms, I recognize how necessary each painful step was to my growth. Had I been named CEO of Johnson Marketing as I'd expected, I might never have discovered my full capabilities or developed the confidence that comes only from building something entirely your own. Walking away from the family business was the hardest decision I'd ever made, but it forced both me and my family to recognize my true value, not as an extension of their legacy, but as a capable leader in my own right. The million-dollar deal they lost without me became the catalyst for a transformation that ultimately benefited us all. If you're facing a similar crossroads, feeling undervalued despite your contributions, questioning whether to stay in a situation that doesn't recognize your worth, remember that sometimes walking away is the strongest statement you can make. Know your value, even when others don't see it yet. The path may be harder initially, but the destination can exceed anything you would have achieved by accepting less than you deserve. Have you ever had to walk away from something important to find your true worth? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need this reminder of their own value. Sometimes the greatest successes come only after we have the courage to close doors that were never truly open to us. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth isn't determined by others' recognition of it.